When Daniel bought his dream house in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, he believed his worries were finally over. The white fence, the garden full of roses, and the quiet evenings were everything he had worked for. But what he didn't know was that behind the calm smiles of his neighbors, chaos waited, especially in the form of one woman, Karen Mitchell, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. It started small. Karen would wave from across the street, always with that polished grin. But Daniel soon noticed how her friendliness vanished whenever he didn't agree with her HOA expectations. The final straw came one Saturday morning when Daniel woke to find a white Tesla parked right in front of his gate. He assumed it was a mistake until he saw Karen's name on the HOA visitor log. She had parked there for her weekly brunch, blocking his driveway completely. Daniel politely knocked on her door, but she just smirked. "It's just a few hours, Daniel. Don't be petty." He took a deep breath. A few hours? That's what they all say before it turns into days. Daniel had no idea that this simple parking issue was about to uncover layers of entitlement, power, and justice that would shake the entire neighborhood. That day, he made one silent promise: if the HOA wanted to play games, he would play smarter. The next day, Daniel placed a polite note on Karen's Tesla: "Please do not block my gate again. Vehicles parked here will be towed." He took a photo of it, timestamped for proof. But instead of respecting his property, Karen posted the photo on the neighborhood's HOA Facebook group, mocking him. "Daniel thinks he owns the street now," she wrote, and several of her HOA loyalists laughed in the comments. Daniel didn't respond. He knew people like Karen loved attention. But when he returned home from work 2 days later and saw her Tesla in the same exact spot, his patience ran thin. She had even added a note of her own this time: "Maybe you should move your gate instead." Daniel couldn't believe the arrogance. Still, he decided to stay calm. He contacted the HOA office and filed an official complaint, attaching the photos. The HOA manager promised to look into it. But when Daniel checked the next day, Karen had already spoken to them and they dismissed his complaint as not a priority. That was the moment Daniel realized something important: the HOA wasn't protecting the residents, it was protecting Karen, and so, he began collecting evidence. Photos. Logs. Videos. He wasn't going to lose this battle with emotion. He would win it with proof. By the following weekend, Daniel had set his plan. He had learned the HOA bylaws inside out, every clause, every loophole. And one line stood out: any vehicle blocking a private residence's access point may be towed at the owner's expense, with photographic evidence. That was all he needed. So when Karen once again parked her Tesla in front of his gate that sunny Sunday morning, Daniel didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled. He calmly took photos from every angle, even recording a short video of her car fully blocking the driveway. Then he made a quick call to the city's towing service. When the tow truck arrived, Daniel greeted them politely and handed over the printed rule from the HOA bylaws. Everything was legal, clean, and documented. As the Tesla was hooked up and lifted off the ground, neighbors peeked through their curtains. Some even whispered, "Finally." But Daniel didn't feel joy, just relief. It wasn't revenge. It was fairness. When Karen came home later that evening and found her Tesla gone, the silence on the street was almost cinematic. She stood there frozen, mouth open, clutching her designer purse. Then came the screaming, the calls to the HOA, and the flood of angry posts online. Daniel didn't reply to any. He simply uploaded the HOA policy screenshot, no words needed. 3 days later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Karen arrived in a storm of perfume and indignation, waving papers as if she were in a courtroom. "Daniel had no right to touch my vehicle," she shouted, glaring across the table. Daniel, calm as ever, slid his documents forward. Photos, timestamps, HOA rule citations, all printed and neatly organized. "Actually, Karen," he said softly, "I followed the exact HOA bylaw you approved last summer." The room went silent. Even the HOA president looked uncomfortable. Karen turned pale. "This is harassment," she barked. But Daniel pointed to the final page, a signed HOA clause with her own signature. Whispers spread around the table. Neighbors began to murmur things they'd never dared say aloud. "She's been abusing power for years. Maybe it's time someone stood up to her." For the first time, Karen's control cracked. Her fake confidence trembled under the weight of evidence. The HOA president cleared his throat and said, "Given the documentation, the fine stands. And Karen, please avoid further violations." It wasn't an apology, but it was justice. Daniel walked out quietly, leaving Karen fuming behind him. But he knew she wouldn't let this end here. People like her rarely did. Over the next week, strange things started happening. Daniel's mailbox was left open, his trash cans mysteriously went missing, and anonymous complaint letters appeared about his lawn. He didn't need to guess who was behind it. Karen was trying to get even, but instead of reacting, Daniel doubled down. He began keeping records of everything: security camera footage, voice recordings, timestamps. He even upgraded his home security lights, turning his house into a quiet fortress. Then came the twist he didn't expect. One evening, as Daniel reviewed footage, he caught a clear image of Karen sneaking by his front yard at night, placing something on his mailbox, a fake notice saying he owed HOA penalties. That was the last straw. He compiled all the evidence and submitted it directly to the HOA's regional board, the higher authority above the local one. 2 days later, an email arrived that changed everything. The regional HOA board called for an investigation. Within days, Karen's influence crumbled. Every complaint she had ever filed was reopened. Every fine she had issued was reviewed. And every neighbor she had intimidated finally spoke up. The truth spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Karen had been using her HOA position to bully, threaten, and manipulate. When the report came back, it was damning: multiple violations, misuse of authority, and harassment. She was officially removed from her HOA position. The same woman who once ruled the block now stood outside her perfect White House, watching as the for sale sign went up on her lawn. Daniel didn't celebrate. He simply watered his garden that evening, feeling the peace return. For the first time in months, his driveway was empty, just the way he liked it. But before leaving, Karen sent him one last message: "You think you won, Daniel? But this neighborhood remembers everything." He smiled. "Good," he whispered. "They'll remember who finally stood up." Weeks passed, and the neighborhood transformed. People began talking again, helping one another with lawns and fences. It felt like a community again, not a kingdom ruled by fear. Daniel became a quiet local hero. People would wave when he walked by, often thanking him for doing what everyone else was too afraid to do. One afternoon, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, the tow truck driver who had removed Karen's Tesla stopped by. "You started something good here," he said with a grin. "We tow cars all over, but that one felt special." Daniel laughed. "I didn't want revenge," he said. "Just respect." The man nodded. "Well, you got both." As the orange sky faded into night, Daniel leaned back, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The kind that comes when right finally wins over wrong. And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.